The divorce papers landed on my desk at exactly 2:15 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. And with them came the crushing realization that my 7-year marriage had been nothing more than a business transaction that had finally found a better offer. Michael Rodriguez, the man who had promised to love me through sickness and health, had just traded me in for Victoria Sterling's trust fund. And the worst part was watching my best friend since college gleefully participate in dismantling everything I thought was real. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Emma Chen, and until that devastating Tuesday, I had been living what I thought was a comfortable middle-class life in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood. Michael worked as a loan officer at Pacific Northwest Bank, while I had spent 5 years climbing the corporate ladder at TechFlow Solutions, a mid-sized digital consulting firm downtown. We weren't wealthy, but we were building something together, or so I believed. Our daughter Sophia was 9 years old, brilliant and curious. With Michael's easy smile and what I hoped was my determination to never settle for less than she deserved, Victoria Sterling had been my closest friend since our freshman year at the University of Washington. Back then, she was just Vicky from Spokane, a scholarship student studying business while I pursued computer science. We'd bonded over late-night study sessions, cheap ramen dinners, and dreams of conquering the Seattle tech scene together. What I didn't fully grasp during those years was how deeply Victoria resented having to work for everything while watching her classmates coast on family money. She'd grown up hearing stories about her grandmother's investment firm, Sterling Financial Group, but had been estranged from that side of her family since childhood due to her parents' bitter divorce. Everything changed 6 months before my world collapsed. Victoria's grandmother passed away, leaving her the sole heir to Sterling Financial Group, a boutique investment firm managing over $200 million in assets. Overnight, my struggling friends transformed into one of Seattle's most eligible heiresses. The change was immediate and startling. Gone were our casual coffee dates and weekend hiking trips. Victoria moved from her cramped Fremont apartment to a sprawling Bellevue mansion, traded her Honda Civic for a BMW, and began frequenting the kind of exclusive events I'd only read about in Seattle magazine. Initially, I was genuinely happy. For her, Victoria had worked harder than anyone I knew, taking on multiple jobs throughout college and spending years in entry-level positions while building her resume. If anyone deserved a stroke of good fortune, it was her. Michael seemed equally supportive, often commenting on how remarkable it was that Victoria had inherited such responsibility at 32. He'd ask detailed questions about her business dealings, showing an interest in finance that I'd never seen before. I thought he was just being a good friend. The first red flag should have been the way Michael started comparing our lifestyle to Victoria's new standard of living. During dinner conversations, he'd mention the restaurants Victoria had described, the vacation destinations she was considering, the investment opportunities she was exploring. These observations felt innocent enough at first, like natural curiosity about how the other half lived. Gradually, I noticed a tone of dissatisfaction creeping into his voice when he looked around our modest 2-bedroom house with its IKEA furniture and single-car garage. Michael began staying late at work more frequently, claiming he was pursuing additional certifications to advance his banking career. He'd return home energized in a way I hadn't seen since our early dating years, full of stories about networking events and professional development seminars. When I suggested we could cut back on some expenses so he could pursue an MBA, he dismissed the idea, saying he was learning more through real-world experience than any classroom could provide. I assumed he was finally finding his professional passion and supported his newfound ambition wholeheartedly. The second red flag emerged during what should have been a celebration. TechFlow Solutions had just landed a major contract with a prominent Seattle biotech company, a deal I'd spent months cultivating through relationship building and strategic proposal writing. It was the kind of victory that typically prompted Michael to suggest dinner at our favorite restaurant in Pike Place Market. Instead, when I shared the news, he seemed distracted, offering congratulations that felt perfunctory rather than genuine. Later that evening, I overheard him on the phone describing Victoria's latest business acquisition with far more enthusiasm than shown for my professional achievement. Victoria herself had become increasingly distant, canceling our regular coffee meetings and declining invitations to family gatherings where she'd once been a fixture. When we did spend time together, she seemed to be evaluating my life rather than enjoying our friendship. She'd make subtle comments about the limitations of working for someone else, the challenges of living paycheck to paycheck, and the security that came with generational wealth. These observations weren't malicious in tone, but they carried an undertone of pity that made me increasingly uncomfortable. The third and most disturbing red flag appeared during Sophia's birthday party. Victoria attended, bring in an extravagant gift that overshadowed everything else under our daughter's modest celebration tent. While the other parents mingled in our backyard, I noticed Michael and Victoria engaged in intense whispered conversations that stopped abruptly whenever I approached. When I asked Michael about it later, he claimed they were discussing investment strategies for Sophia's college fund. Victoria had offered to provide financial advice, he explained, given her new expertise in wealth management. That explanation satisfied me temporarily, but I began paying closer attention to the dynamics between them.
Wow.
There were subtle touches that lasted a moment too long, shared glances that seemed to carry private meaning, and an intimacy in their body language that extended beyond friendship. Victoria had always been naturally affectionate. Michael was characteristically charming with everyone, so I convinced myself I was imagining connections that didn't exist. The alternative was too devastating to consider seriously. The breaking point arrived on that rainy Tuesday when Michael requested an unexpected lunch meeting. He'd never asked me to leave work for a personal conversation, so I assumed he had important news to share, perhaps about a promotion or a family matter requiring immediate attention. We met at a quiet cafe near my office, and the moment I saw his expression, I knew something fundamental was about to change. He looked nervous, but determined, like someone who had rehearsed a difficult speech and was committed to delivering it regardless of the consequences. Michael ordered coffee he didn't drink and spent several minutes making small talk about Sophia's upcoming school science fair before finally revealing the purpose of our meeting. He and Victoria had fallen in love, he announced, and while they hadn't intended for it to happen, they could no longer deny their feelings for each other. He spoke about emotional connection, shared values, and mutual understanding as if he were describing a business merger rather than confessing to an affair that was destroying our family. The cruelest part wasn't the revelation itself, but the way Michael presented it as an inevitable outcome rather than a choice he'd made. He claimed that our marriage had been struggling for years, that we'd grown apart without realizing it, and that Victoria had simply helped him recognize what was missing in his life. According to his narrative, I had become too focused on my career, too independent, too satisfied with our modest lifestyle to understand his deeper needs and ambitions. Victoria, in contrast, shared his appreciation for the finer things in life, and could offer him opportunities for growth and advancement that I never could. When I pointed out that Victoria was supposed to be my best friend, Michael had the audacity to suggest that she had been protecting me by keeping their relationship secret until they were certain about their feelings. They hadn't wanted to hurt me with uncertainty, he explained, so they'd waited until they were committed to a future together before revealing the truth. This twisted logic presented their months of deception as a form of consideration rather than betrayal. The divorce papers he handed me that afternoon were comprehensive and clearly prepared by expensive legal counsel. Michael was requesting joint custody of Sophia, a 50-50 split of our marital assets, and spousal support to help him transition to his new life situation. The document made no mention of his affair with Victoria, instead citing irreconcilable differences and the natural evolution of people growing in different directions. Reading through the legal language that reduced our 7-year marriage to a series of financial transactions, I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest where trust and love had once resided. That evening, after Michael moved his belongings to Victoria's Bellevue mansion and Sophia was asleep in her room, I sat in our empty living room trying to process the magnitude of what had just occurred. In a single afternoon, I'd lost my husband, my best friend, and the life I'd spent years building. Michael had essentially been recruited away from our marriage by a better offer, and Victoria had used her newfound wealth to purchase the companionship she'd always envied in others. But sitting there in the silence of my half-empty house, I realized something that would prove more important than any emotion I was feeling in that moment. Michael and Victoria had made a fundamental miscalculation. They had assumed that I would accept their betrayal quietly, that I would fade gracefully into the background of their upgraded life, that my middle-class aspirations would never pose a threat to their elevated social position. They had forgotten that the same determination that had built my career at TechFlow Solutions was still very much intact, and that losing everything sometimes created the perfect conditions for building something even better. I had been Emma Chen, the accommodating wife, the loyal friend, the team player who prioritized harmony over personal advancement. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But Michael and Victoria had just liberated me from those limitations. They had shown me exactly what they thought I was worth. And now, I was going to show them what I was actually capable of achieving when I stopped making their comfort my primary concern. The transformation wouldn't happen overnight, and the path ahead would require every ounce of strategic thinking and professional skill I possessed. But as I looked around the home that would soon be sold to satisfy our divorce settlement, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the thrill of unlimited possibility. Michael and Victoria thought they had won by securing their fairy tale romance funded by inherited wealth. They were about to discover that they had actually just motivated their most dangerous competitor. Over the following days, I began to see my situation with startling clarity. Michael had never been particularly ambitious or innovative in his banking career, coasting on charm and basic competence while others around him earned promotions and recognition. His attraction to Victoria wasn't really about love. It was about access to a lifestyle he felt entitled to, but had never been willing to work for himself. Victoria, despite her inherited wealth, lacked the operational experience and strategic vision necessary to maximize her financial firm's potential. She had money but limited understanding of how to leverage it effectively in Seattle's competitive business environment. Meanwhile, I had spent 5 years developing expertise in digital transformation, client relationship management, and strategic business development at TechFlow Solutions. Understood technology trends, market dynamics, and the specific challenges facing growing companies in the Pacific Northwest. More importantly, I had built a reputation for delivering results and maintaining client relationships based on trust and competence rather than inherited credentials. The idea that would eventually reshape all of our lives began forming during a routine client meeting that week. I was presenting a digital marketing strategy to a startup founder who mentioned his frustration with traditional financial advisory services that didn't understand the unique needs of technology companies. Most investment firms, he explained, were structured around old economy businesses and struggled to evaluate or support innovative ventures. There was a significant gap in the market for financial services that combined investment expertise with deep understanding of the tech sector. That conversation planted a seed that grew rapidly over the subsequent weeks. What if I could build a financial services firm specifically designed for the technology companies I already understood so well? What if I could combine my industry knowledge with investment expertise to create something more valuable than either traditional banking or old money wealth management? What if the divorce settlement that Michael expected to limit my options actually provided the capital I needed to compete directly with Sterling Financial Group? The more I researched this possibility, the more excited I became about its potential. Seattle's tech ecosystem was exploding with startups and growing companies that needed sophisticated financial guidance but weren't being served effectively by existing firms. Victoria's Sterling Financial Group managed substantial assets, but had no particular expertise in technology, investments, or innovation-focused business development. There was an opportunity to build something that could not only compete with Victoria's inherited advantage, but potentially surpass it through superior service and specialized knowledge. For the first time since receiving those divorce papers, I felt genuinely optimistic about my future. Michael and Victoria had inadvertently provided me with the motivation, freedom, and potentially the financial resources necessary to build the kind of business I had never dared to imagine while I was focused on being a supportive wife and maintaining stable employment. They thought they were discarding me for a better model, but they had actually just freed me to become their most formidable competition. The awakening came in fragments over the following week, each revelation more devastating than the last. What I had initially interpreted as a sudden romantic development between Michael and Victoria revealed itself to be a carefully orchestrated campaign that had been unfolding under my nose for months. The signs had been there all along, but my trust in both of them had blinded me to the elaborate deception they had constructed around my daily life. The first piece of the puzzle emerged when I was sorting through Michael's belongings that he had hastily packed. Hidden beneath a stack of banking journals, I discovered a folder containing printed emails between Michael and Victoria dating back 8 months. The correspondence began innocuously enough, with Victoria seeking advice about managing her inherited wealth and Michael offering insights from his banking experience, but the tone shifted dramatically after the third exchange, evolving from professional consultation to intimate personal sharing. That had nothing to do with financial planning. Reading through their digital conversations felt like watching strangers discuss my life from the outside. Michael described our marriage as comfortable but limiting, explaining to Victoria that he felt trapped by my small-scale thinking and inability to envision a lifestyle beyond middle-class stability. He painted himself as an ambitious man held back by a wife who was satisfied with mediocrity, conveniently omitting the fact that my steady income and career advancement had been supporting many of his professional development efforts for years. Victoria's responses were equally revealing and far more calculating than I had anticipated. She systematically encouraged Michael's dissatisfaction with our life together, suggesting that he deserved a partner who could match his sophisticated tastes and long-term vision. Her messages contained detailed descriptions of the lifestyle she could offer, from exotic vacation destinations to exclusive social events, painting a picture of luxury that she knew would appeal to Michael's underlying materialism. But the most chilling aspect of their correspondence was Victoria's strategic approach to dismantling my relationships and undermining my confidence. She had been subtly poisoning Michael against me for months, highlighting my perceived flaws and reframing my strengths as weaknesses. My dedication to my career became workaholic tendencies that neglected family relationships. My financial prudence was characterized as fear-based thinking that prevented growth and opportunity. My satisfaction with our lifestyle was dismissed as lack of ambition and limited vision for the future. Victoria had been playing a psychological game that I hadn't even realized was happening. Every canceled coffee date, every declined invitation, every subtle criticism of my choices had been part of a larger strategy to create distance between us while simultaneously drawing closer to Michael. She had used our friendship as reconnaissance, gathering information about our marriage that she then weaponized to seduce my husband away from our family. The second revelation came through Sophia, who possessed the startling observational skills that children often demonstrate when adults assume they're not paying attention. During our weekly movie night, she casually mentioned that Daddy and Miss Victoria had been meeting for lunch every Tuesday for a really long time at the fancy restaurant near her school. Sophia had noticed them during her field trip to the Seattle Aquarium 3 months earlier, sitting close together at a window table, holding hands and looking like the people in romantic movies. My daughter's innocent observation confirmed that. Michael and Victoria's relationship had been physical as well as emotional long before they claimed to have fallen in love. They had been conducting their affair in plain sight, confident that I was too trusting and too busy with my own responsibilities to investigate their activities. The Tuesday lunch meetings explained Michael's mysterious schedule changes and his increased attention to his appearance on certain weekdays. Further investigation revealed the scope of their deception extended far beyond emotional betrayal. Bank records I accessed through our joint accounts showed that Michael had been making unusual transfers to a new investment account that I hadn't known existed. When I traced the account details, I discovered that Victoria had been providing Michael with insider information about upcoming business deals, allowing him to make profitable investments using her family's financial connections. Michael hadn't just been cheating on our marriage. He had been using our shared resources to build a secret financial portfolio with Victoria's guidance. The money he claimed to be spending on professional development had actually been funding investment opportunities that Victoria identified. Through her position at Sterling Financial Group, they had essentially been using my income to establish Michael's wealth so that he could feel worthy of Victoria's elevated social status. The pattern became clear as I reviewed months of financial records and cross-referenced them with Michael's changed behavior. Every mysterious expense, every unexplained late night, every unusual business trip had been connected to building his relationship with Victoria and establishing his credentials as a suitable partner for a wealthy heiress. He had been systematically preparing to leave our marriage while using our joint resources to finance his transition to a more luxurious lifestyle. Victoria's role in this financial manipulation was particularly sophisticated and calculating. She had introduced Michael to exclusive investment opportunities normally reserved for wealthy clients, allowing him to build a portfolio that would make him appear financially successful in his own right. This strategy served multiple purposes. It gave Michael the confidence to pursue her romantically. It provided him with assets that would reduce his dependence on our divorce settlement. And it created the illusion that their relationship was based on mutual attraction rather than pure financial opportunism. But Victoria's manipulation extended beyond helping Michael build wealth. She had also been systematically undermining my professional reputation within Seattle's business community. Through careful questioning disguised as friendly interest, I discovered that Victoria had been spreading subtle doubts about my capabilities and judgment to mutual acquaintances in the tech and finance sectors. Nothing overtly malicious, just carefully placed suggestions that I was struggling with work-life balance, experiencing marital stress that affected my professional performance, and lacking the sophisticated business acumen necessary for senior leadership roles. These character assassinations were delivered with the concern of a worried friend, making them more credible and harder to defend against. Victoria would express sympathy for my situation while simultaneously planting seeds of doubt about my stability and competence. She had been working to isolate me professionally at the same time she was destroying my personal relationships, ensuring that I would have fewer options and less support when the truth finally emerged. The most devastating revelation came when I discovered that Victoria had been recording some of our private conversations. While searching through old text messages, I found references to specific comments I had made during confidential moments when I had shared concerns about my marriage, my career frustrations, and my insecurities about balancing motherhood with professional ambition. Victoria had been collecting intelligence about my vulnerabilities and sharing it with Michael, giving him detailed insights into my emotional state that he could use to manipulate our interactions. This betrayal cut deeper than the affair itself because it represented a complete violation of the trust and intimacy that define true friendship. Victoria hadn't just stolen my husband, she had weaponized our relationship to gather information. That would help her destroy my life more effectively. Every moment of vulnerability I had shared with her had been stored as ammunition for future use against me. The psychological impact of these discoveries was overwhelming. I had been living in a carefully constructed reality where Michael was a devoted husband, going through a temporary rough patch, and Victoria was a loyal friend, adjusting to sudden wealth. In truth, I had been surrounded by people who were actively working to undermine my happiness while maintaining facades of love and friendship. The life I thought I was living had been an elaborate performance designed to keep me complacent while they dismantled everything I valued. But as the shock of these revelations began to settle, I found myself experiencing something unexpected. Alongside the grief and anger, for the first time in years, I was seeing my situation with complete clarity, unfiltered by the need to maintain relationships or preserve feelings. Michael and Victoria had inadvertently given me the gift of absolute truth about who they really were and what they were actually capable of doing to someone they claimed to care about. This clarity extended to my understanding of my own capabilities and potential. I had been so focused on being a supportive wife and loyal friend that I had systematically undervalued my own intelligence, strategic thinking, and professional expertise. The same analytical skills that had made me successful at TechFlow Solutions could be applied to understanding and responding to Michael and Victoria's betrayal. They had made the mistake of assuming that my kindness indicated weakness and that my trust reflected naivety. The evidence I had gathered revealed that both Michael and Victoria possessed significant character flaws that would ultimately work against them. Michael's attraction to luxury and status made him predictable and manipulable by anyone who could offer him access to wealth and prestige. His willingness to betray his family for financial advantage demonstrated a fundamental lack of integrity that would eventually manifest in other relationships and professional situations. Victoria's approach to achieving her goals through manipulation and deception indicated a person who relied on strategy and cunning rather than genuine competence or leadership ability. She had inherited wealth and position, but lacked the authentic skills necessary to build or maintain success through her own efforts. Her need to control and manipulate others suggested deep insecurities about her actual capabilities. Understanding these weaknesses provided me with valuable insights into how they would likely behave in the future, and what strategies would be most effective in dealing with them. Michael would always prioritize his own comfort and advancement over loyalty or principle, making him unreliable as a partner in any long-term endeavor. Victoria would continue to view relationships as opportunities for manipulation rather than genuine connection, eventually alienating people who discovered her true nature. Most importantly, I began to recognize that their betrayal had actually freed me from relationships that were fundamentally dishonest and limiting. Michael had never truly supported my ambitions or valued my contributions except as they benefited his own situation. Victoria had never been the loyal friend I believed her to be, but rather someone who tolerated our friendship while looking for opportunities to advance her own interests at my expense. This realization shifted my perspective from victimhood to strategic opportunity. Instead of mourning the loss of relationships that had never been authentic, I could focus on building a future based on my actual capabilities and authentic values. The divorce settlement that Michael were expected to constrain my options could become the seed capital for ventures that would demonstrate my true potential. The business idea that had emerged from my client conversation began to take more concrete shape as I considered the full scope of what I could accomplish with complete focus and determination. A financial services firm specializing in technology. Companies wouldn't just compete with Victoria's traditional wealth management approach. It would represent a fundamentally superior business model based on expertise, innovation, and genuine value creation, rather than inherited advantage. Michael and Victoria's relationship was built on mutual opportunism disguised as romantic love. Michael wanted access to Victoria's wealth and status, while Victoria wanted an attractive companion who would validate her desirability and social position. These shallow foundations would eventually create instability in their partnership, especially when external pressures challenged their comfortable arrangement. In contrast, the business I was envisioning would be built on genuine expertise, authentic relationships with clients, and innovative approaches to solving real problems in the marketplace. It would succeed or fail based on the value it created, rather than inherited advantages or manipulative strategies. This fundamental difference in approach would ultimately determine which vision proved more sustainable and successful. As I processed the full extent of Michael and Victoria's deception, I felt something crystallizing inside me that was stronger and more focused than anything I had experienced during my marriage. The woman who had prioritized harmony and accommodation over personal advancement was gone, replaced by someone who understood that success required strategic thinking, competitive awareness, and unwavering commitment to achieving clearly defined objectives. Michael and Victoria thought they had eliminated a potential obstacle to their happiness by removing me from their lives. They were about to discover that they had actually created their most formidable competitor by freeing me from the constraints of trying to maintain relationships with people who had never deserved my loyalty or trust. The game was changing, and this time I would be playing to win rather than simply trying to keep everyone else comfortable. The awakening was complete. I now understood exactly what I was dealing with, what resources I had available, and what strategies would be necessary to build the life I actually wanted rather than the one I had been settling for. Michael and Victoria had shown me their true nature, and now I was going to show them mine. The investigation began at 5:30 in the morning on a Saturday, when I sat at my kitchen table with 3 cups of coffee, a legal pad, and the kind of methodical focus I typically reserved for complex client projects at TechFlow Solutions. If Michael and Victoria thought they could dismantle my life through careful planning and strategic deception, they were about to discover that two could play that game, and I had advantages they hadn't anticipated. My first priority was understanding the complete financial picture of what they had been doing with our joint resources and how Victoria's wealth was being used to facilitate their relationship. I started by pulling every bank statement, credit card record, an investment document I could access legally through our shared accounts. What emerged was a pattern of financial activity that painted a picture of systematic preparation for Michael's transition away from our marriage. The investment account I had discovered contained over $4,000 that had been transferred in small increments over the past 8 months. Each transfer corresponded with periods when Michael claimed to be working late or attending professional development seminars. Cross-referencing these dates with his calendar revealed that every supposed banking conference or certification program coincided with significant market movements that Victoria would have been aware of through her position at Sterling Financial Group. Michael hadn't just been having an affair. He had been engaged in what appeared to be insider trading using information that Victoria provided through her access to privileged financial intelligence. The profits from these trades were being accumulated in an account that only Michael controlled, giving him a substantial nest egg that would support his lifestyle after leaving our marriage. They had essentially been using my income to fund his infidelity while building his financial independence. But the financial investigation revealed something even more significant than Michael's preparation for divorce. Victoria's guidance of his investment strategy demonstrated a level of financial sophistication that contradicted her public persona as someone who had inherited wealth but lacked business acumen. The trades Michael had made required detailed understanding of market dynamics, regulatory changes, and industry trends that suggested Victoria possessed genuine expertise in wealth management and investment strategy. This discovery shifted my understanding of the competitive landscape I would be entering. Victoria wasn't just a lucky heiress who had stumbled into running her grandmother's firm. She was an intelligent and capable businesswoman who had been deliberately concealing her abilities behind a facade of inherited privilege. She understood that being underestimated was a strategic advantage, allowing her to operate more effectively while competitors dismissed her as merely fortunate rather than formidable. The realization that I had been underestimating Victoria's capabilities was both sobering and energizing. It meant that building a competing business would be more challenging than I had initially anticipated. But it also suggested that the market opportunity was even larger than I had realized. If Victoria was genuinely skilled at financial management, but was limiting herself to traditional wealth preservation strategies, there was significant room for innovation and market disruption. My investigation expanded to include detailed research into Sterling Financial Group's client base, service offerings, and market positioning. Public records revealed that the firm managed assets primarily for established wealthy families and traditional businesses, with very limited exposure to technology companies or innovative ventures. Their investment philosophy appeared conservative and risk-averse, focused on preserving existing wealth rather than generating aggressive growth through emerging opportunities. This conservative approach made sense for Victoria's inherited client base, but created a significant gap in the market for technology companies that needed sophisticated financial guidance combined with deep understanding of innovation cycles and growth strategies. The very factors that made Sterling Financial Group stable and predictable also made it poorly positioned to serve Seattle's rapidly expanding tech ecosystem. I spent hours researching the backgrounds and service models of other financial firms in the Seattle area, looking for competitors who might already be serving the market segment one was considering. What I found confirmed that most existing firms fell into two categories: large institutional players like Wells Fargo and Bank of America that offered standardized services without industry specialization, or boutique wealth management firms that focused on traditional investments for established wealthy clients. None of the existing players had built their business model around the specific needs of technology companies. It required understanding of equity compensation structures, pre-IPO planning, rapid scaling challenges, and the unique risk profiles associated with innovation-based businesses. This market gap represented a genuine opportunity to build something valuable rather than simply competing on price or convenience with existing providers. The technology industry research led me to investigate my own professional network and reputation within Seattle's business community. I reached out to former clients, colleagues, and industry contacts under the pretext of exploring new career opportunities, carefully probing to understand how I was perceived in the marketplace and whether there would be demand for the specialized services I was considering. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive and revealed something important about my professional standing that I hadn't fully appreciated. Multiple contacts described me as one of the most knowledgeable and trustworthy consultants they had worked with, someone who consistently delivered results while maintaining the highest ethical standards. Several mentioned that they had been disappointed when I stepped back from some projects to focus on family responsibilities, suggesting there was pent-up demand for my services. More significantly, several technology executives mentioned their frustration with existing financial service providers who didn't understand their business models or industry dynamics. They described paying high fees for generic advice that didn't address their specific challenges. Working with advisors who were intimidated by the complexity of equity compensation and growth planning, and struggling to find financial partners who could scale with their rapidly changing needs. This market research confirmed that the business opportunity I was considering was not only viable, but potentially very lucrative. Technology companies were underserved by existing financial firms, and my combination of industry knowledge and professional reputation positioned me uniquely to address this market gap. The question was not whether demand existed, but whether I had the resources and capabilities to build a firm that could meet that demand effectively. The investigation of my own financial situation revealed that the divorce settlement, while emotionally devastating, would actually provide sufficient capital to launch a specialized financial services firm. Washington State's community property laws meant that I would receive half of our marital assets, including half the value of our house and retirement accounts. Combined with my existing savings and the potential for securing additional investment from clients or partners, I would have enough funding to establish a credible business operation. But building the business would require more than just capital. It would need strategic partnerships, regulatory compliance, and operational expertise that I didn't currently possess. This led me to investigate potential allies and mentors who could provide guidance and support for launching a financial services firm. I needed people with complementary skills who shared my vision for serving the technology market segment. My research identified several potential partners and advisors who could fill critical gaps in my knowledge and capabilities. Catherine Wells, a former managing director at a major investment bank who had recently left to pursue consulting opportunities, had both the regulatory expertise and the industry credibility necessary to establish a legitimate financial services operation. Her background included extensive experience with technology IPOs and venture capital transactions, making her ideally suited for the market I wanted to serve. Daniel Park, a CPA and former venture capital analyst who specialized in early-stage technology investments, possessed the technical financial skills necessary to develop sophisticated service offerings for growth companies. His network included relationships with many of the entrepreneurs and executives who would be ideal clients for a specialized financial firm. He had been looking for opportunities to build something innovative rather than continuing to work within traditional institutional structures. Lisa Thompson, my former colleague at TechFlow Solutions, who had left to start her own business development consultancy, maintained relationships throughout Seattle's technology ecosystem and understood the operational challenges of building a service business from scratch. Her experience with client acquisition and relationship management would be invaluable for establishing credibility and growing a client base. The investigation of potential partnerships revealed that I wasn't the only person who had identified the market opportunity for specialized financial services targeted at technology companies. Several other professionals were exploring similar concepts, which meant that timing would be critical for establishing market position and competitive advantage. The window for entering this market as an innovative first mover was limited and closing rapidly. This competitive pressure reinforced the importance of moving quickly and decisively once I had secured the necessary resources and partnerships. The divorce proceedings would take several months to complete, but I could begin building relationships and developing business plans immediately. By the time my financial settlement was finalized, I needed to be ready to launch operations and begin serving clients. Personal investigation required examining my own capabilities and limitations with the same analytical rigor I was applying to market research and competitive analysis. Building a successful financial services firm would require skills and experience that extended beyond my current expertise in digital consulting and client relationship management. I needed to develop deep knowledge of investment strategies, regulatory compliance, and financial planning methodologies. This skills gap analysis led me to design an intensive self-education program that would prepare me for the challenges of running a financial services business. I enrolled in evening courses on investment management and financial planning at the University of Washington's continuing education program. I began studying for the Series 66 examination that would qualify me to provide investment advice legally. I started reading extensively about entrepreneurship, business development, and competitive strategy. The education process was demanding but energizing in a way that reminded me of my early career, when I was constantly learning new technologies and business methodologies. I had forgotten how much I enjoyed intellectual challenges and professional growth when I wasn't constrained by the need to accommodate other people's limitations or preferences. Michael had often discouraged my interest in additional education, claiming it took time away from family responsibilities and wasn't necessary for my current role. As my knowledge of the financial services industry expanded, I began to understand the specific advantages I would have as a new entrant compared to established competitors. Traditional firms were constrained by existing client relationships, regulatory structures, and operational processes that made it difficult for them to innovate or adapt quickly to changing market conditions. A new firm could be designed from the ground up to serve technology clients efficiently and effectively. My technology background would allow me to leverage tools and methodologies that traditional financial advisors were slow to adopt. Data analytics, automated reporting, digital client interfaces, and scalable service delivery models could provide significant competitive advantages while reducing operational costs. The same technological sophistication that technology companies expected from their service providers could differentiate my firm from competitors who relied on traditional relationship management approaches. The investigation also revealed important intelligence about Michael and Victoria's relationship, dynamics that would be relevant for anticipating their future behavior and potential vulnerabilities. Social media analysis and conversations with mutual acquaintances provided insights into how they were presenting their relationship publicly and what challenges they might be facing privately. Victoria had been carefully managing the public narrative around their relationship, presenting it as a romantic fairy tale rather than the calculated transaction it actually represented. She posted frequently about their travels, expensive dinners, and luxury purchases, creating an image of effortless happiness and prosperity. But careful analysis of the timing and content of these posts suggested a performance designed to convince others and possibly herself that their relationship was based on genuine affection rather than mutual opportunism. Michael's social media presence revealed different priorities and concerns. His posts focused heavily on his new lifestyle and professional opportunities, emphasizing his association with Victoria's wealth and social status. He seemed less interested in portraying their relationship as romantic, more focused on establishing his credibility as someone who belonged in exclusive social circles. This difference in emphasis suggested potential tension about their respective priorities and long-term goals. The investigation of their public behavior patterns revealed that both Michael and Victoria were heavily invested in maintaining appearances and social validation. They frequently attended high-profile events and made sure their participation was documented and shared publicly. This need for external validation suggested insecurities that could be exploited if circumstances challenged their carefully constructed image. More importantly, their focus on lifestyle and status over substantive achievement indicated that they were unlikely to invest the sustained effort necessary to build lasting success in competitive business environments. Michael had always chosen the path of least resistance in his career, and Victoria had inherited rather than built her wealth. Neither had demonstrated the persistence and resilience required to overcome significant challenges or adapt to changing circumstances. This analysis suggested that while they might enjoy short-term advantages through their combined resources and social connections, they would be vulnerable to competition from someone who was willing to work harder and think more strategically about long-term success. Their relationship was built on mutual convenience rather than shared values or complementary strengths, making it susceptible to stress when external pressures challenged their comfortable arrangement. The investigation phase concluded with a comprehensive understanding of the competitive landscape, market opportunities, resource requirements, and strategic challenges I would face in building a financial services firm. More importantly, it had revealed the specific vulnerabilities and limitations of Michael and Victoria that could be leveraged for competitive advantage. I now possessed detailed intelligence about their financial activities, relationship dynamics, business capabilities, and personal priorities. This information would be invaluable for anticipating their moves and positioning my business to compete effectively against Sterling Financial Group. They had been operating under the assumption that I would fade quietly into the background of their upgraded life, but I was actually preparing to become their most informed and motivated competitor. The investigation had transformed my understanding of the situation from personal betrayal to strategic opportunity. Michael and Victoria had inadvertently provided me with the motivation, resources, and competitive intelligence necessary to build something that could not only compete with their advantages, but potentially surpass them through superior strategy and execution. They thought they had eliminated a potential obstacle to their happiness, but they had actually created the conditions for their most formidable challenge. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. This one hit the mark. You won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.